So let's have a think about how you know if you are a visioner and what that is, what that means for you, what the implications are. And if you don't know this term, that's completely fair enough because it's actually one I made up myself, so I can't expect you to know really. But what I've done is divided up the path of a kind of like your creative career, if you like, excuse me, into 5 stages. So we start out as beginners and we're just feeling our way and trying our hand at whatever we come across and learning things. Improvers are starting to develop some skills in the materials or the techniques that interest them and thinking about developing a practice on their own, so beginning to do work in their own time or their own space. And then once you've got that kind of going on, then you start moving into visioning territory. And the kind of the problem that defines this stage is like, it's like, what is my direction? Where am I going with this? And how do I find this direction? What's the right choice for me? What's my right next step? Because we could go this way, we could go that way, we could be influenced by one teacher or another teacher, we could try this technique or that technique, and none of it will feel kind of bedded in who you are. It won't express who you are or what you have inside you, because you haven't done the preliminary stages to connect who you are with your work. And that's the kind of the big insight really for people at this visioning stage, is that you need to start from the beginning of the process. And that's the creative process I'm talking about. We don't just rock up to the canvas, blank canvas, no plan, and think, oh, what shall I create today? Well, you could, but then you'll just be looking around for ideas and you'll end up copying something, and it'll feel a bit shallow, a bit insignificant. And that's because there's no preparation. You're trying to, if you were going to give a speech, you wouldn't stand up on stage and then think, oh, what shall I say? You'd do a little bit of planning beforehand, you'd do some research, you'd work out what it was that you wanted to say. And it's the same with art. So I would say the big insight for vision is to start from the beginning of the process and give yourself time to work out what it is that interests you. Start from the point of the inspiration. What is it that gives you ideas? And to feed that inspiration, collect lots of material and become familiar with it. Work with it so that you're narrowing your focus and refining your ways of handling that source material. And then you can allow that material to lead you in the ideas, the work that you then create. So to give you an example from my work, I'm inspired by places. So my starting point is always to get out and get walking and exploring and looking around and seeing what I find. And from that starting point, then I'm particularly interested in shape, which won't be as a surprise for a sculptor, but yeah. So I look for shapes and that's what I'll record. But I also need information about colour particularly, so I'll record that as well. And then once I've collected together lots of knowledge about the place that I'm interested in, so I understand how it works, I understand what the stories are around it, I've collected together lots of references of shapes, and I've collected together lots of references of colour, and then I can use that material so I can say, oh, this is the shape that I'm most interested in, this is what I'm drawn to, this is where there's a kind of conscious planning for the process, but there's also a kind of subconscious or intuitive element that says, this is the bit that interests me, this is where I want to focus now, and I'll focus in on a particular shape or a particular story, and then I can use those shapes to make the kind of starting point for my sculpture, and then other information that I have from the story or the colours or the textures, whatever else I've collected, help me put together that finished piece. So by working in this way, I never come to that blank canvas or that blank work table and go, oh, what shall I make? I don't know. So we get rid of all that kind of, that horrible, horrible, frightening moment. And we start with the ideas, start with the basics. So once you know how to do that, then what I would say the goal for you at this visioning stage is to firstly to know what that process is and to start to understand how to apply it so that you can choose your direction. We need to set a kind of rough compass point so that you can start your journey. If you're interested in portraits one day and architecture the next day and something conceptual the third day and I don't know, some other topic I can't think of on the fourth day, you're going in 4 different directions and they're all different to each other. So that doesn't work. So you need to pick one of those as your main compass point. And by picking your kind of compass point and understanding the process, then you can put together a vision or a plan for your first project and think of it as a whole project. You know, you're going to spend time in the early stages and it'll grow as it goes on, so you'll make, you know, course correction adjustments, but you've got a sense of that kind of a trajectory of a direction that you're going in. So you know where to start, you know how to build up the work from those foundations, and then, you know, you're ready to implement your vision. But it helps, I think, to take a moment at this stage, because it is confusing and there are a lot of options and you could go in a lot of different directions. But if you want to kind of find your direction, then actually taking some time to stop and consider will really help you. And the process will really help you, and that's what I would recommend. So if you've heard some of this and you feel like that applies to you, you feel like you are in this visioning stage, that's what you're aiming for, give me a thumbs up, perhaps below. And just a final note to say, I'm also still looking for maybe 2 visioners who could perhaps be free for about 20 minutes next week, just for a kind of background chat. It would be really helpful to hear from you. So if you can do that as well, perhaps say I can or yes or something in the comments below, and I'll sort that out for you. Okay, see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.